20 through 24. But, I'm going to shut this off. This is out here. Right. If anyone cares. I don't think we're struggling with the heat this day. You're also going to notice that we're going to, what these are over here, Megan is trying to create kind of a comprehensive idea for our Sunday school teachers in general for how to walk people through the Bible. So to know where Isaiah is and what's going on, you start off with creation. God created the world, and all things were created by Him and for Him. And then humanity in some way disturbed that, destroyed that, brought about a fall. God selected Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and those became the people of Israel, and the entire story of Israel is part of the background of Christianity. And then after the people of Israel return from exile, Jesus is incarnated and He comes into the earth, which is where we get the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then we have the Passion and Crucifixion, which is almost always the last third of any of the Gospels. It is Jesus' Passion and Crucifixion. He has been resurrected and ascends to heaven. And then you have the story of the people of God, which is the story of the church, which is most of Acts and much of the writings of Paul. And then we have the second coming of Jesus, which is the idea that Jesus will return and set all things right. Isaiah chapter 5 is part of the story of the people of God, the people of Israel. And so in chapter 5, Isaiah chapter 5, this is what he says. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and champions at mixing drinks, who acquit the guilty for a bribe, but deny justice to the innocent. Therefore, as tongues of fire lick up straw, and as dry grass sinks down in the flames, so their roots will decay, for they have rejected the law of the Lord Almighty and spurned the word of the Holy One of Israel. It's amazingly how prescient this is, isn't it? Woe to those who call good evil and evil good. It's as if what we're living in is some kind of unique time where no one ever ran around saying goodness is bad and badness is good. Like we're not the first people to invent this. And so Isaiah chapter 5 kind of shows us that we're not. This has been around for a long time. So in some ways there's some comfort here, I think. I think as believers we can end up believing that we're the only ones and we have to be the ones who stand up against the night, and we're not the only ones who've done this. It reminds me of a missionary story. If you know, Japan opened up briefly in the 17th century for Christianity, and Christian missionaries flooded in, and then Japan shut down for almost 200 years and wouldn't let anybody in. There were a group of Christians who converted and became followers of Christ, and they worshiped Christ in Japan. They actually were near Hiroshima. Believe it or not, there was a large Christian population in Hiroshima. So that should tell you something about our relationships. A fairly large Christian community in Hiroshima. And then when Japan reopened up to trade, the missionaries came in and they found that there had been a community of Japanese believers that had been worshiping in secret for the last 200 years. They believed that they were the last Christians on earth. Because Japan had been locked in and they'd never had any contact with any other Christians. And they believed that they were the only Christians left on earth. Wow. And then what a connection for them to come back and to find out, no, actually you are one of billions. So I think that's somehow what we can feel, is that the things that we've been struggling with, the things that we've been talking with over the past few weeks, is we kind of feel like it's us four and no more, and we have to hold out against the light. Things have been a lot worse in the past. Probably things will be a lot worse in the future.
Is there a name for that group?
I don't have that. I'll see if I can't look it up for you.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, statements? Alrighty, so we've kind of hit this. The ideas that I'm going to draw today's work from is a guy by the name of Thomas Oden. Anybody know Thomas Oden? Or at least heard the name, maybe? Okay, maybe you've heard the name. This is the guy who, for me, I read some of his works in the early 2000s, and it really helped me get my head wrapped around postmodernism and understand what it was doing and where I was as a person. So the work he wrote is called After Modernity, What? It's written in 1990, so some of these ideas are going to come out of that work. So I would encourage you, if you like some of the things we're talking about, to kind of jump on that. If that makes sense. Alright, so we have been, we're kind of finished with postmodernism. Do you remember how we said we were going to describe postmodernism? What is the basic idea behind postmodernism? Do you remember? Talked about this all the way back at the very, very, very beginning.
Filters.
Filters, right? Remember we talked about it? We said there's the outside world, right? So that's it. What do I mean by the outside world? Do you remember? Everything outside of my head, right? Everything outside of my head. My relationship with my parents, that's part of the outside world. My relationship with the police, that's the outside world. Science, religion, all these things are the outside world. The inside world is kind of what? My own perspective, my own view of the world. So there might be me, and then there's the view of the outside world. And what we said is that postmodernism posits that there are a series of filters between us and the outside world. Do you remember that? Should come in here. Let's see if we can't flesh some of these out over the last few months as we've been talking about these. What are some of the filters that we've discussed that kind of filter out reality, so to speak? Do you remember some of those? See if we can't bring them out here.
Privilege.
Okay, well, that was one of the things. What was power, right? Power and privilege, and kind of, I'm a person of a certain ethnic background, and that kind of in our culture gives me a certain status, allows me a certain privilege, access to privileges. That's one of the things that they say, is that power is one of the key elements. If I'm a person with power, right, I view the world in a certain way. If I'm a person without power, how do I view the world? Very different way. So that's one of the things that they claim is one of the filters. What's another filter?
Experience.
Our experiences, sure. Our own personal experience. Nobody has the exact same experience.
Education.
Education. But education is not simply just going to school and getting educated, remember? What are some of the things that falls under this? Language, right? We remember talking about language and the power of language that it has to shape our world. And that fell under hermeneutics, right? How do we interpret? How do we interpret texts? How do we read? How do we read texts? That's all kind of language and hermeneutics, and education kind of falls into that. What type of an education we have? What else? What are some other filters that we have? That we've talked about, hopefully. What the role of culture? Right? I come from one culture, another person comes from another culture, and that culture is going to impact the way I filter out and the way I get at and understanding the outside world.
I forget what Kuhn called it, but your framework or your
paradigm?
Paradigm, yeah, paradigm.
And that's separate from culture, right? Even though some cultures have very large paradigms, paradigms can be very different. You can have a paradigm of medical practice. How should medicine be practiced? And that's a small view of paradigm. That medicine is effective to change and solve people's problems is itself a paradigm. So paradigms can be really small. What kind of medicine do I believe in? What kind of programming language do I believe in? And those kind of give different paradigms. And then there's how do I view the world? Is the world a series of mechanistic forces? And we kind of talked about this with term of meta questions, right? Right? We said there were first order questions, second order questions, and then meta questions. How we answer. Do you remember what the meta questions were?
One is like, what is reality?
What is reality? Ontology. How do I know what's real? What's real and how do I know it? That was one.
Epistemology.
Epistemology. How do I know what is real?
Axiology, ethics.
Axiology, ethics. How do we know what is valuable? Now there are a few more, but these are pretty much the main ones that we've talked about. And what did we talk finally about in terms of history? We talked about that one time. And meta-narratives. Remember that? We talked about, this was early on, we talked about how the West kind of viewed itself as we have gotten out from under fear and superstition. Our culture, we're smart, we're using reason and science, and we've left behind fear and superstition, and we're now moving into an enlightened era, and we're going to bring enlightenment to the rest of the world. And postmodernism said, hey, that's just your narrative. What do you think the Africans thought of your meta-narrative? Did you think they thought that you were pulling them out of fear and superstition? Like that's kind of how that worked. So as we look at this, what do we think of all these? Outside world, me. What do we think of all these filters? Legit, not legit? How do we work through these?
They're certainly influential. I mean, I don't think postmodernism would be as effective as it is or influential as it is if it didn't have a lot of truth to it.
Yeah. When you look at all these filters, what do we really think? What do we think about our chances of reaching the outside world objectively is?
You poison the well with the word objectively. 0% chance.
Yeah.
Well, and this is partly why modernism said, modernism, it's this idea that you can be objective. But all of these filters that are in place, what is your possibility of being objective? Almost zero, right? Your possibility of being objective is next to zero. So does that mean there is no objectivity, there is no truth? How do we work this?
I think if you have no base to which to start from, you're just gonna be blown around because there's so much information, so much input that's going to contradict the input you heard yesterday. But wow, it would be it's a mess.
Yeah, and you can see why people end up saying the outside world is unknowable. That you live in a self-referential world. What that simply means is people who believe in very similar ways as you do kind of echo back what you already believe. That's kind of what they're driving at. And you can see, like, this is how you end up thinking there's no such thing as objective truth, and you can't find it. What is a person who runs around saying, I have the objective truth? What do they look like to the people who understand these things?
Like an idiot. Or at best, they look naive.
Yeah. And so, well, what would be the logical result of all this? There's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as objectivity. There's no such, you can see how we have, when you begin to realize these different things, you can begin to look at our world out there and kind of figure out, oh, this is why we're crazy. Right? These kind of things are kind of why we're a little bit off. Like, there is no reality. There is no external, objective reality that you can get to that's knowable. Because all of these different filters are poisoning your thought process. So how do we use this as Christians? Should we use this as Christians? Do we just reject it wholesale? No. I'm objective. The Bible gives me the objective truth. Is that how that works?
I think we use it as Christians, right? I mean, because our experiences, our culture, our education, we look at it through a certain lens.
Okay.
And our worldview lens is Christian. So we're already using this from, like he said, a basis.
Mm-hmm. Having a foundation.
Yeah.
And we use these as maybe kind of critiques of that foundation.
Right. It guides us.
Guides us.
I think it's also useful to find, to understand that we are not immune to these filters.
Yeah.
We don't have one denomination.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we are for the same reason. If we have a truth, it's that, part of this is an acknowledgement that we are not totally immune, and we cannot be totally objective when it comes to even interpreting the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard thing for Christians to think about.
It is hard.
But in another way, and this is one of Kevin's favorite points I've heard him talk about.
Oh, good. Look at him. He's going to bring his father-in-law into this.
But
boy, there's no brown nosing here.
If
My father-in-law said.
if you see something coming out of the data, it doesn't make sense. You know, a modernist almost has to say, well, this has to be the truth, or, you know, this is bad data, or something like that. But, you know, you can say, well, how am I misreading it? You know, like, you could give someone a verse, and, you know, it seems to clearly say X, Y, Z, and that is contradictory to all, you know, reason. It's like, well, maybe we're not engaging with it correctly. Maybe my understanding of that is not complete.
If we start with the assumption, because all of us make assumptions, if we assume God is right, then the error is somewhere else. It may be in the evidence that is bad evidence, or maybe it's my understanding of the evidence, but either one of those doesn't make God wrong. It makes the evidence bad or me bad. And so you gotta hold that gently to say, okay, we don't have it figured out yet. The other thing I think this does that's good is this is what we're going to interact with to those who don't believe.
Yeah. That's probably why we're doing this class, right?
Yeah. And so, not saying you agree with it, but it gives you a basis of understanding of the person you're talking to, why they are responding the way they are responding, and in some cases grant a bit of grace. That,
Yeah.
okay, this is where they are. God can work with them where they are. I don't have to beat them over the head, but this provides understanding.
Well, I struggled with postmodernism as I went through college and began to learn about all these different filters. I struggled with it. How do I understand it? How do I work my way through this? And I started reading Oden, some of the things that he said, and what Thomas Oden says. And I'm throwing this out as a thesis for you to ruminate on. I'm not saying Thomas Oden said it, so it's true. This is something that began to make sense to me, and I began to work my way through it. We have to think in terms of there's pre-modern, right? Modern, and then postmodern. Now the way we have been talking about it in this class, the way most people talk about it is the pre-modern and modern. What is their relationship? Sharp break, gradual break. Is there anything that's pre-modern and modernism kept? Like, are they cleanly divided? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I mean, it's a pretty clean break, most people would say. In the Renaissance, all of a sudden people woke up from 1,000 years of stupidity.
Yeah, and all of a sudden we were smart again because we stopped reading the Bible.
Isaac Newton got hit on the head with the apple, and then the world started.
Right, and it started working. So the way we've talked about it in this class,
Concussion improves
Yeah,
society.
right. The way we talk about it in this class is that modernism is distinct from pre-modern. And, you know, they were stupid back then. We're enlightened. We're knowledgeable. We're knowing people. And so there's this hard break between pre-modern and modern. What's the break between postmodern and modern? Hard, soft? Is the postmodern world radically different than the modern world? The way we've talked about it in here. This is a completely different shift.
What's gradual? I mean, if you look at a 30-year-old, they're completely different from when they were 5. But it wasn't that one day they woke up and they were 6 feet tall and could speak fluently, and you know, it's a grad. You know, if you look at, you know, what's the difference between 2018 and 1718, you say, wow, it's a radically different world. You know, how different is 2018 from 1918? Not as different. You know, it's gradual.
Gradual? How have we talked about it in this class? Is modernism and postmodernism clearly different or just kind of different?
Clearly different, but I think there was almost generational shifts that happened.
Yeah, most baby boomers are still running around here.
Yeah, and it's the odd thing is that most baby, you know, I'm the last of the baby boomers. They recognize the filters. They just, on an unconscious level, don't apply it to themselves.
Right?
Yeah, everybody else
Right?
has filters.
Right? It's everyone else was blind like that, but I'm not because I'm objective.
Right. You know.
Right. That's why we don't listen to the African, because his view is clearly tainted. My view is not tainted, right? Isn't that how modernists would speak? My view is not tainted. I look at the evidence objectively. That poor stupid African, well, he's so mired in his own fear and superstition, he can't get out of it, right? I mean, that's how modernists would speak.
Well,
I don't know that
but more than that, I even recognize it in myself. I mean, I recognize it as truth for myself, you know, and I think most baby boomers would do that.
Yes,
It's true for myself, I just don't live that way.
yes,
There's, you know, the difference between that. You know.
yes.
I know I should eat better, I just don't, you know. But on a unconscious level, you know, I recognize it, I just don't live that way. You know?
Yeah, well, I hear what you're saying. I would contend that we have talked about it in this class, and I've done it deliberately, as if these are clean braked areas, like as if they're cleanly cut off. Postmodern isn't the same thing as modern. What Odin said was, there are two types of postmoderns. There are postmoderns who looked at modernism and said, that's a failed view, that's a failed worldview. It didn't do what it claimed it could do. It should be completely abandoned. And he called that truly postmodern. And then he said, there's another type of postmodern, but he's not really postmodern. He's ultra-modern. And he said, what most postmoderns are not postmodern in this sense. They're modernists who have taken the conclusions to their logical result. They are people who are moderns and said, oh, so this does apply to me. This does apply to the world. And he broke it down and he said, there's ultra-moderns, and some of the things that he would contend is the crazies that are out in our world who are out running around there doing the crazy stuff, they're not really postmoderns. What are they?
Ultra-modern.
They're ultra-moderns. They have simply taken the conclusion of modernism. What's the conclusion of modernism? There is no truth. There is no objective reality. Reality is socially constructed, and it's all about power and power relationships. They are ultra-moderns who are just trying to live it out. True postmoderns would say modernism was a time, it's had its day, we're moving on to something else. And the reason he didn't get a lot of press is because he didn't define what that something else was. Because it's not known yet what that is. That for me kind of snapped this into place. The existentialists, the postmodernists, they're not really creating something new, they're simply standing on the shoulders of modernism. And they're taking it to its logical conclusion. Does that make sense? I want to read to you a portion, if I can find it here, of what Odin said. It's a fairly large quote. In a 1994 symposium on postmodernity, and this is what he observed. So I'm sorry to read it to you. It's a fairly long segment, but it's really apropos for this. Postmodernity, in my meaning, is simply that historical formation that will follow the era of spent modernity, the time span from 1789, fall of the Bastille, to 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism, which characteristically embraced an Enlightenment worldview that cast an ideological spell over our times. Now, in grave moral spin-out, we could call what is passing the era of French Enlightenment, German idealism, and British empiricism. But those influences are just more complicated ways of saying the modern consciousness. Experience teaches that when avant-garde academics bandy about the term postmodern, it is usually more accurate to strike post and insert ultra. For guild scholars, postmodernity simply means hyper-modern, where the value assumptions of modernity are nostalgically recollected and ancient wisdom compulsively disregarded. Meanwhile, the emergent actual postmodernity that is being suffered through outside the ivory tower is not yet grasped or rightly appraised by those in it. And what's he saying? Kind of what I was saying, right? Postmoderns aren't actually really truly postmodern. They're using all of the same tools. For example, how about the fact-value split? We talked about this early on, right? One of the things about pre-modernism, did they have a fact-value split? No. Modernity has what? Fact-value split. Your facts and your values have to be separated. In the postmodern world, what do they say about facts? There are no such things as facts, so what's all that matters? Values. So what have they done? They've retained the fact-value split. All they've done is done what? They've just shifted over to values instead of shifting onto facts. That's it. So what remains in place fundamentally for both postmoderns and moderns? Fact-value split. Does that make sense? Or do we need to go through that again? That these people in some ways are not really avant-garde. They're simply modernism dressed up and replayed with some different tunes. When I got my head wrapped around that, I thought, yes, I think it depends on how you want to call modernism. I would call modernism the simple idea that we can construct a society and a culture without having to reference the divine. That is the essence of modernity. We don't need an outside God to tell us how the universe runs. We can do it on our own. And what has postmodernity told us about it? There is no external outside world. It's all just power plays, social dynamics, and they just say, well, I think this is the world you have to live in. Well, what if that idea that you can construct a world without reference to the divine, what if that is the actual poisoned apple? What if that is the actual bad idea? What would that mean to modernity and postmodernity?
Are they called? Just a short.
It's a different way of looking at this.
I think it gives us some opportunity in postmodernism, because modernism says, we have the answer.
Yes.
It's just that it's wrong,
Yes.
you know, but there's confidence in the answer. Postmodern says, we have no answers,
Yep.
you know, and so there's opportunities to say, hey, here, think about this. Here's the answer. And because there's no basis, you know, postmodern, you have no foundation.
And someone who's truly, fully postmodern, they're just going to say, I don't even know. Like, how can you even talk about right and wrong or good and evil? Do I need to work on this a little bit more to kind of flesh it out, or how are we doing with this very idea that Odin is bringing about? It's in some ways it's taking everything that we've discussed and kind of trashing it. Right?
Well, one of the things that, as you read your postmodernists, that's a common characteristic is they deny they're postmodern.
Yes. They don't want any labels.
Yeah, because labeling then becomes, you know, back to almost to your modernist idea. And so, no, I'm not postmodern. But I think it also speaks to the fact that what it means to be postmodern is actually, as Odin said, very nebulous.
Yeah.
They don't, you know, they're grasping at mist, and they keep this.
Well, I wanted to bring out something. There's a who's familiar with Jordan Peterson? Found out he just did this interview on. He just did this interview in Norway like 3 days ago with Dave Rubin, who was a liberal. He's a homosexual who was a liberal who has converted and become a conservative, kind of. Really, he's more of a classical liberal. But he did this interview with Jordan Peterson. I want you to listen to what Jordan Peterson says about the individual and its relationship to the community. And think about all these different levels that he says. Let's see if we can't get it here. He just asked him, what kind of gets you going? What's a great feeling that you have? Like, what is the...
Jordan Peterson.
This is Jordan Peterson, this is Dave Rubin. Sorry. And he just asked him, and I want you to listen to Jordan. He's a big name right now. A lot of people are running around, ooh, Jordan Peterson, he's a big deal. I want you to listen to ask which one he sounds like. Is he modern, postmodern, or pre-modern? Just listen to the way he sounds.
Be able to go around the world and have people stop you on the street and say things like that to you. It's like, that's as good as it gets, you know? And people are telling me stories like that all the time. They come up and they say, well, you've watched this. It happens all the time. People come up and they tell me some way that their house was out of order, you know, they're hopeless and nihilistic and drinking too much and watching too much pornography and procrastinating too much and being not serious with the relationship and not getting along with their parents and, you know, not formulating a vision and not growing up and, well, you know, there's just endless ways that you can descend into a kind of, what would you call it, a kind of grungy, filthy carpet infested hell. And so, and then they say, look, I've been watching your lectures and I developed a plan for my life, and I've been trying to be more responsible, and I've been really trying to tell the truth, and I mended my relationship with my father, and I got married to my girlfriend, and now I have a flat, and I quit doing drugs, and I've just tripled my salary in the last year, and I didn't commit suicide like I was going to 6 months ago. I think I have, I don't know, out of the 150 people that I talk to each night, I would say probably over the course of the lecture series, there's probably 10 people like that a night who tell me that. And so, see, because I believe what I said tonight, I believe that the individual is sovereign, and that individual sovereignty is the cornerstone of reality itself, and it's the cornerstone of the state, and it's the cornerstone of reality itself. I truly believe that to be the case. That every time I hear someone say, look, I've got my act together, I think that's one more weight on, if the scales are always tilting towards good or towards evil, and every time someone decides to straighten themselves up, they take a major weight off the evil side and they put it on the good side, and it's not trivial. And I believe that that's what the redemption of the world depends on. It's not political. It happens at the level of the individual, just like the descent into totalitarian catastrophe occurs when people abandon their sovereign responsibility, which I think is the most accurate way of diagnosing what happened in the 20th century. So whenever someone comes up to me and says, I was not doing so well, and here's 3 ways where I've really put my life together, we have a little 15-second party, and we both know why. And so that's as good as it gets, and so that's happening constantly. And
Did you hear him? What did he say?
Center of the universe is the individual, and what's good or bad is whether or not it's working.
Yeah, but he said sovereign responsibility, so doesn't that mean that somebody gave us that responsibility?
Yes, Jordan
And he talks
Peterson
about
is an
good and
anomaly.
evil.
Yes.
So he definitely, is it like, you talked about modernism being like, we can do this without God. I didn't hear him say.
Well, it depends on
I
what
heard
he
him
means by
not say
sovereign.
anything.
Yeah, it depends on what he means by sovereign.
He's like Aristotle. He is so close to being. He doesn't know any better.
Yes, in some ways, what Peterson is doing is he's dragging up old things from the 1950s and he wants to represent them. The problem is what? It's not the 1950s anymore. The individual is sovereign. Can you honestly look at these? And we all agreed, man, these are real. What does that mean about humanity and his social life? Is it just kind of important, or is it fundamentally important? How you're raised, does it matter or does it not matter?
It matters.
Right? Is he taking any of this into consideration? Where is it? It's just gone. And there's 2 views that you can kind of see, and this is kind of what's going on right now in terms of our political culture. I would argue that they're called the sociological, sociology and psychology. The sociological says everything's social. Everything fits into a social milieu. You are not a product of anything other than your social context. So it's how does sociology talk? How do those people talk? You heard sociologists. What do they talk like? It's all about people groups. It's all about mass movements of people. The individual is completely absorbed into the group. Completely absorbed into the group. How do psychologists deal with reality?
Everything is constructed from the conscious.
It's the sovereign individual. The sovereign individual acts individually in the world, and so he becomes sovereign. Now, once again, I'm not complaining because he bounces around with these different terms. I don't know what he means by sovereign. I've watched a lot of Jordan Peterson. That's tricky. He doesn't seem to believe in God. Well, where is this sovereign responsibility coming from? He doesn't seem to ask that question. He calls it, at best, he calls it the logos. And he doesn't define what that means either. So psychology starts with the individual and moves to his collective groups. Sociology starts with groups and moves to intellectuals. And I can give you
I don't know what you wrote down there.
Democrat and Republican.
Okay.
Your Republicans have a tendency to focus on the individual's place in the world. This is a very modernistic thing. Democrats work with sociological. They think it all in terms of groups. What does this do with existentialism in general? What would existentialism do with sociology as an entire discipline? What would Soren Kierkegaard think of sociology as a discipline? It's constraining on the individual. It's preventing him from living out his passion, right? That's what Kierkegaard would say with this. So this is the way you're looking at it, is we have one political party that thinks everything that matters is the group, another political party thinks that everything that matters is the individual, and then you wonder why you're fighting. The question is, are any of these people even working with anything that's outside of modernity? Or is this all being framed within a modern context? It's all modern. We're still playing with the same things. We can do this without any appeal to any divine authority. We can do it on our own. We don't need anybody else's help. We are not helpless. We are active agents in the world, whether psychologically or sociologically. We are still active. We don't need anyone else's help. We can do it on our own. This is why Odin really began to help me rethink a lot of things. Because he says, maybe there's other people that we can listen to, people who have come before us. Maybe there's such a thing as ancient wisdom. People who've lived before us, who might have a clue in how reality works. Maybe we could listen to them too. Not just listen to ourselves. Because both of these groups are self-referent. They don't listen to anyone else. Do we go to China and ask the Chinese what they think about things? Still postmodern. We're going to do the global world, the global economy. We're all going to do it in Americans' terms, where everybody's all equal. Because we're all going to do a very postmodern approach. Everyone's equal. Everyone's got the fair share. There is no truth. We're all just kind of in this together. That is an American, modernistic, / ultra-modern approach to how we can run the world, how we can think about the world.
And if you don't peacefully trade with us, we will send our warships to make sure you peacefully trade with us.
Absolutely. We will absolutely do that.
I would challenge you on one thing,
Okay.
what you said. That is an American approach. I would challenge you on this basis.
Western approach, probably better to say it.
Now, I would say that is a human tendency approach, because that has been I would suggest that has been the basis for every empire since antiquity. Because we are, every empire says we are going to impose ourselves on you. You are going to do it our way. You are, this is how it's going to happen. And so rather than being American or even Western, I would say that's a human nature approach that is unregenerate human nature.
Yeah. But the category, I would argue the categories and the ideas and the way we're going to form it is it's all very, like, what are we trying to do to Islam? What are we trying to do to Islam? We're trying to turn Islam into a Middle Eastern form of Christianity. Keep your state over here, keep your religious worship over here. If you go to a mosque, you want to worship at a mosque, go right ahead. Go worship at a mosque. But don't try to bring your Sharia law into the courtroom.
Well, the problem is, within Islam, that is untenable.
That is untenable. It's not Muslim.
No.
It's not Muslim. And so we demand that Muslims act like they're Christians. Because that's the way they act over here. Yeah, but Islam isn't its own thing. You're forcing it into a mold.
But we do the same with Christianity in the
Absolutely.
States.
We absolutely do. Keep your mouth shut. The Bible doesn't need to be involved in the Ten Commandments. We don't need to have anything here. You see what I'm saying?
Don't bring it into the workplace.
Don't bring it into the workplace. It's your private view. You can have it at home. And everyone says this is the most tolerant. Really? It's the most tolerant? You're dictating to everybody that we're all going to view our religions this way.
Which is actually antithetical to any religion aside from atheism.
Right? Right. That's what's kind of going on here. And what I'm kind of getting at is, what I'm challenging us here is to be truly postmodern. To be truly postmodern means we give up on modernism. It was a failed experiment. It didn't work. You cannot construct society without reference to something divine. You have to have, I will call you have to have a metaphysic. Have to. You can't construct it without it. And that would be truly postmodern. as opposed to ultramodern, who are trying to use the same categories, the same language, the same ideas, they're just extending it out into relativity. What do we think of this?
Do we have to go through ultramodern before we actually really get to postmodern?
What do you mean, as a group or us individually?
As a group, like as the
I don't know.
world.
I don't have no idea. At that point, you're asking me to be a prophet, and I'm really a historian more than
Let's
anything
hope
else.
not.
Well, I honestly, I think what we're doing is we are going through ultramodernism right now. And ultramodernism might just kill itself. I don't know that ultramodernism is really all that tenable.
Well, in another way, that ultramodern, the way I think of it is an extension of modernism. It's like, modernism is all about, the individual and reason, and that, the human generates meaning and truth and things like that. But they still kind of believe, oh, we listen to the scientists, and there's debate and this,
Yes.
well, he's smarter than I am. Whereas like the ultramodern is like, wait, no, you can't discredit my conclusions. I'm 17 years old. I'm in high school.
Mhm.
I'm every bit as smart as the expert in this field who's been here for 40 years.
Yeah.
I have deduced this, and you cannot discredit my experience just because you're a white man.
Absolutely.
To add to that, it's the whole idea of who are you to tell me my ideas are wrong? Who are you
Yes.
to discredit what I'm saying?
Yes. Absolutely. Who are you to tell me these things? That's a person who's not dealing in postmodernism like we're talking about it. That's what? That's an ultramodern. Absolutizes the individual. I like Jordan Peterson. I think he's the most sane of the secularists. He's very sane, very easy to understand. I like a lot of what he said, but he is still a modernist. He's not, the terms are all in modernistic terms. They are not truly postmodern. He's still using a lot of the terms that come out. He still has this idea that religion it falls into one category. This is what it is, and you can't let it out of those boxes. That's kind of how he feels about it, yeah.
He tends to be very, he looks at religion very much like from a cultural standpoint. It says, there's a lot of values to be gained from studying things like the Bible, but he doesn't look at it as that relationship like we do.
Nope. Personally, for me, this helped me find my way through postmodernism. Helped me to make sense of what we're dealing with and try to figure out, hey, we are actually on the verge of, we're kind of the avant-garde of what's going to come next. Do we really reject the modernistic experience and try to find something new, which may actually be something old? Or do we keep going with the same constructs, the same ideas? We're just going to figure it out. We're just tweaking it better. I would argue ultramodernism is just tweaking modernism. It's just tweaking it. It's really not a true revolution. It's not really throwing it out. Yeah.
So how does this apply to what we do in the church?
We're working through this. This is all, you're going to run across people who are trying to ultramodern the church. I would say part of the emergent church movement is an ultra-modern experiment. Anyone who can cut off the past,
Jesus
I would
would not
argue.
discredit anyone's life experience.
Yes. I would say you can tell anyone who's at least interested in true postmodernism from a modernist is what you do with the past. I know this sounds weird because I'm a historian, but how you treat the past is actually, I would argue, a really good litmus test for modernism. Because if we cut ourselves off and we say we have nothing in continuity with the past doesn't matter, I would argue you're dealing with some kind of modernism. I would say Christianity, our belief, whatever we're going to come back, it says no, we have to incorporate. We may not buy it wholesale, but we have to incorporate it. It has to be brought in with us. And so anything ultramodern or what they would call traditionally postmodern, I would argue is going to be fanciful with the new. The idea of progress is still going to be in there.
Right side of history.
Yes, and they use don't you want to be on the right side of history? I love that. You don't even realize how this is even working out. You don't know the right side of history. Right now, we're trying to determine if FDR was the right side of history or not. It's 85 years ago. Was the New Deal really that great of a deal? It's still being worked out, it's still being argued over. They haven't figured out if you're on the right side of history now. There's no way that you can go, you voted for Donald Trump, you're on the wrong side of history. How can you possibly know that? You can't possibly know that.
I think in applying it to where we are as a church, I think this gives us solid foundation to hit the pause button and say, I don't know that it's a good idea to go there, and in some cases say, here's a good reason why it's not. Because with your ultra-modern, who want nothing to do with the past, who say that, yeah, we accept God, we accept Jesus, but what he's done in the past is worthless. God has changed. And this is where we get homosexuality is okay. This is where we get all of these.
Open theism would come out of this, yeah.
Your process theologians come out of that. And in how we work this out as a church, this gives us a foundation. Wait a minute, time out. Your starting point is flawed, and this is why.
I think this gives us a great opportunity to be able to have new conversations. But I think it really begins with, for me, it begins with a complete rejection of modernism. I think modernism was, I think the Enlightenment, personally, this is my personal, I think the Enlightenment was the worst thing the West has ever done. I mean, I kid you not, I think it was the worst thing the West has ever done. And we're only just now seeing the results of it. Why I think it's so awful is the trajectory that we're on. We're ending up in a world where every man does what's right in his own eyes.
That sounds like Judges.
It does sound like Judges. And that's where we're ending up. And that's why I think the Enlightenment was an utter and complete failure. No, God is a part of our life. He's a part of our will. Whether you think he's in Confucian, that the divine is there. It's a reality. We have to deal with it. That would be my position. I think the Enlightenment was the biggest failure in Western history and needs to just be wholesale rejected.
Some historians are now calling it the Endarkenment. For such reasons.
Yeah. But I don't know. So we'll see how it works out. But thoughts on this before we get out of here? No, kind of a big idea day today, really.
Successful for Satan.
Successful for what?
For Satan.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. What we're going to do over the next few weeks is we're going to talk more about these filters, how Christians and kind of as Christians can approach each of these issues and kind of wrestle through them with a postmodern and what we can pull from them and how we can witness to others and build a productive theology on it. Let's pray. Father, we're thankful for this day. We are thankful for all that you have given us. We are excited about the opportunity to push the envelope as believers in you. Help us to find the old story as the new story retold. We love you and we praise you. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.